Hi and welcome to this video log with me, Wayne, from swimmingcyclingrunning.com. This week I'm going to review another book that I've recently finished, and this book is The Obree Way, a training manual for cyclists. And I was very fortunate a few years ago, on the first year that the Triathlon Cycling Running Show ran, I actually managed to convince Graeme to come down to London and actually talk at that show. And he gave an amazing talk, which I managed to get to, about how he broke the hour record. And so I spent a little bit of time with him, not a huge amount, and got to know a little bit of the man. What I like about him in particular is that he's an innovator. He shakes the tree, and he's not afraid of doing something different, even though he might be ridiculed for that. Ridicule doesn't matter. If he thinks it's correct, that's the way he's going to proceed. And that's really what his book, A Training Manual for Cyclists, is effectively about. After a short introduction, Graeme goes into the first chapter, which is entitled What is Training? And here he's absolutely right in that he says training is effectively bad for you. And that is absolutely correct. You might be slightly surprised to hear that. But what we do in training is we create tiny micro tears in the muscles that have to be repaired. And when they're repaired, that's when we actually get stronger. So he's absolutely correct that training is actually bad for you, because it's not the training that improves you, it's once we've rested and repaired those muscles, we actually get better. So we get a slight insight into Graeme from this particular chapter. He's absolutely right in thinking, no, I can train as hard as I want, but if I don't get the rest, then it's all been an absolute waste of time. And although he doesn't say it, you're leading down the road of overtraining and diminishing results from everything you do. But it's in the next chapter he really gets down to business, and he calls that first steps. And you get a huge insight into the mind of a real champion, and he impresses upon you time and again that the important thing about training is training hard and training to actually beat something that you've done previously. But the only way you can actually beat something you've done previously is having a setup that you know is scientifically the same as it was before. So that when you do a training session, and let's say you've gone 5 miles at a particular speed, if you then can go 6 miles at a particular speed, you know that you have improved by effectively 20%. That's huge. You're not going to improve 20% that easily, but you get what I mean. And hopefully you get what he means, in that the setup is what it's all about. If you don't have a scientifically repeatable exercise time and time again, you can't possibly know that the training you're doing is actually improving you. And there we get the mind of a person who really is going out to be the best they possibly can. Effectively, if you can punish yourself by doing a particular thing, but then the next week come back and punish yourself and actually do a little bit more, you actually know you've improved. And that is the basis of effective training. We then come on to a chapter on the turbo session, and Graeme believes that the turbo session is the most important session of the week, because it's that he's set up to be technically accurate every single time he sits on it. And so visualization and preparation about what you're going to do and how you're prepared to do it, making it easy to get on that bike and the same conditions every time, are really important. And it's also important for him to have a goal for every single session, so that you know you're going to hurt yourself, but you're going to hurt yourself for this length of time, and you're going to try and measure and beat last time. And one thing he does impress upon you is just don't give up. When you think you can't go another pedal step or pedal revolution at that pace, go one more, then one more, then one more, and you'll beat last time and you will have improved. That's a huge insight into the mind of a potential champion. In his next chapter on training, Graeme impresses upon the reader the importance for speed. Speed first, and then after that the ability to maintain that speed. And as a coach, I wholeheartedly agree. Unless you can actually do something reasonably fast, and we're talking about someone who does it technically well as well. So for example, in swimming you have to go and discover good technique before you can swim fast. Even if you can swim 10 meters fast, it's not going to help you. If you haven't got good technique, you're just going to destroy yourself. So yes, technique is important, which he goes through. But actually doing something at speed and then making that speed endure is what actually is important. He does consider, if you're going out with a ride with friends, that it probably is wasted time. What you're going to do is you're going to be chatting, and if you're chatting, you aren't actually devoting your time to the training you're meant to be doing. He does concede and accept that there's miles and miles of room for recovery rides. But if you're actually training to be the best you can, then when you're training, there's no room for that type of thing. And consequently, he decides that he prefers to go out alone. And then he doesn't have the distractions of having a little conversation to ease back and not actually give his best. So every single time he goes out for a training ride, not a recovery ride or to the shops ride, every time he does that, it has to be a serious effort, and it has to be something that actually is not interrupted by extraneous things. I think his chapters on the psychology of preparation and the psychology of racing do give an insightful insight, if you like, into how to prepare to actually be your best. And certainly not having a lot of negative people around you, not having negative thoughts, having positive visualizations, etc. must be good for you. I'm a firm believer in the maxim that whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're probably right, is absolutely true in 99.9% of cases. So the mentality of you as an athlete as you prepare and go into a race is hugely important. But the next chapter is yet another step into a slight uniqueness in terms of Graeme's book. The first one was setting up the turbo and having that real hurt session. That's the most important session you can do in a week. The second is in his breathing technique, and he does allure to swimming as a sport where you need good breathing technique, and he's absolutely right, you do. And taking that into cycling is very insightful, I think, because if you look at open water swimming, which is what a lot of triathletes do, if you don't have good breath control, it can set up and often leads to a panic attack and poor performance. Because if you can't breathe properly and smoothly and regularly, you actually are in a permanent state of decline in your swim, until suddenly you get over it, perhaps. But if you're really putting out an effort, you aren't. And so his chapter on breathing technique, I think, is pretty unique in everything I've read as a coach, and I've read quite a few books. So that's well worth reading, and I think if you try and adapt it to yourself, even if you change it slightly, nothing should be set in stone, adapt it to something that really does suit you in a similar vein, then I think it actually will help you become a better cyclist and, by and large, a better performer on race day. We then come to his chapter about pedalling technique, and here I think it is quite insightful. The pedal revolution goes round obviously once, and most people put their pressure on in sort of that position. And he's suggesting you actually put it on in the position at the top of the pedal stroke, so you actually kick it forward and maintain that through to halfway and then kick the other forward. But you don't do so in a huge leap, so you don't put maximum pressure on that pedal. What you do is you put less pressure each time, but you keep that pressure going for longer. And I think that is an excellent tip. I'm certainly going to try and adapt my pedal style to suit that and see what happens. And if nothing else, I think that chapter is probably one of the most insightful in the book, along with his breathing technique and the turbo setup. And probably I feel those are the three chapters in the book that probably are the best for me as a coach, and looking at his innovative thinking, and I love innovators, as you know. The last 3 chapters are stretching, the time trial and nutrition. And in all of those, he makes insightful points about what he went through, why he went through those particular manoeuvres and did what he did, and how they can benefit you. And I think he's right, they are quite useful. In terms of the whole book, those 3 chapters that I've outlined really are the key ones. In terms of criticism, I think the book could have done with some illustration on things like pedalling technique. For example, exactly where he would push the pedals round, how that kick would come into play, because it's difficult for some people to visualise from a written description exactly how something should happen. And I think I'm probably one of those too. I probably prefer things like this, that the picture, to things on a written page, because I read very slowly. I don't know why, I just do. So it takes me a long time to plough through something. I'll then go back over it in case I've forgotten something. But visually, I prefer to actually see something going, and then I get it virtually instantly. So that's one criticism of the book. But by and large, I'd have said that this book is incredibly good throughout. And it certainly gets you thinking, whether you agree with him, agree partly with him, or even perhaps disagree with him. So who should actually read this book? Well, I think anyone looking to actually compete at top level and has designs on winning should read this book, if only to get inside the mind of a real champion. I think all coaches should read this book simply because it does give that juxtaposition, that position that says, well, hang on a second, let's shake that tree, let's not do what everybody is doing. And I love the fact that he says, if someone's suggesting something to you, who benefits? Who is the person that's going to benefit from selling you that energy drink and that energy bar? Well, I'll tell you what, it need not necessarily be you. And I think that's a wonderful attitude to have. And certainly, I hope this book is a success. I hope this book is well read, because it deserves to be. It's written in a vein that says, this is unique. Don't be afraid to do something slightly different. And in coaching, I think that's probably the way I would look at it. Not everything that everybody does is actually absolutely right. Take from everybody what you can see is best and use those best bits. Throw away all the rubbish that's left. And I think that's what Graeme does very effectively. So hopefully this book will be successful. And if you're an athlete not looking to compete at the top, but seeing what an athlete who has reached the top, the mentality they have to have, and the physical training they have to do, then this book is exciting anyway. So hopefully you'll read it too. All right, that's the week this week. Next week I'm going away to Sal, but hopefully I'll get something out before I go. If not, I'll see you in 2 weeks when I'll have tested the Poolmate Pro watch, and hopefully we'll be coming back with a review of that. Thanks very much. Enjoy yourself. I'll be in the heat. Hopefully it'll work.